So let's dive right in. Are Muslim schools fostering hate, or are they actually building bridges of understanding?
It's a really intense question, isn't it?
Definitely. And it's loaded with strong emotions. You hear fears about extremism, but also, real concerns about unfair, harmful stereotypes.
Absolutely. And with everything going on globally around faith and identity, well, it's a topic we really need to look at closely.
Yeah, our mission today is to try and cut through some of that noise. We want to explore the evidence, hear from different voices, and approach this whole thing with, well, open minds and hearts.
That's the plan. And we've gathered quite a bit of material, academic research, official reports, news articles, even some real-world accounts.
So you can get a clear picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think of this as your shortcut to getting properly informed on what's actually happening, based on the sources we found.
Okay, so let's unpack this controversy. It's fair to say Muslim schools have become kind of a lightning rod for scrutiny.
They really have.
And the critics, well, they often argue that some schools promote a very narrow view of Islam.
Which, they claim, could foster intolerance or, in the worst case, radicalization.
And our sources do show where these worries come from. For example, there was a UK government review in 2023.
Right, I saw that.
And even a Daily Mail piece in 2024. They flagged concerns about textbooks in a small number of schools.
Textbooks containing things like anti-Semitic or anti-Christian rhetoric.
Yeah, stuff that promotes an us versus them kind of thinking.
And looking bigger picture, these sorts of accusations, they've definitely fueled calls for stricter oversight, haven't they?
No doubt.
We found a Reuters report from 2025 noting that governments in places like France and also Australia have tightened regulations on faith-based schools.
Citing those fears of extremist indoctrination.
Exactly. Which brings up a really important question. What are the potential consequences if curricula aren't properly checked, even if it's just in isolated cases?
And those fears definitely got amplified by, terrible events like the Charlie Hebdo attack in France back in
A
2015.
huge flashpoint.
Huge. Though it's really, really crucial to state, and our sources are clear on this, no direct evidence ever linked those specific attackers to attending Muslim schools.
That's a critical distinction that often gets lost.
It does.
But here's where the narrative gets, well, really interesting. And maybe not what you'd expect.
Okay.
Despite these high-profile concerns, the data adds some serious nuance. A big Pew Research Center study from 2024 found something quite striking.
What was that?
It found that less than 1% of Muslim schools globally have ever been credibly linked to extremist materials.
Wait, less than 1%?
That's right, less than 1%.
Wow, that's genuinely surprising. It sort of reframes the whole discussion, doesn't it?
Completely.
So if the data shows that, why does this perception, this negative picture, seem to persist so strongly? Our sources show it does.
Yeah, what's driving that disconnect?
Is it just media amplification, or are there other things at play?
Well, it certainly forces us to look at that gap between perception and the data reality.
Right.
And it's fascinating, actually, how a narrative can take hold and just stick, even when the numbers tell a different story. There was an ex-post in 2025 from a community activist that put it quite well. They warned that, basically, broad-brushing Muslim schools as hate factories risks alienating entire communities.
Which makes sense. It highlights how perception, maybe more than just facts, can really shape these public debates.
Precisely.
Okay, so if the data points away from this widespread issue, let's flip the coin. Let's look at the other side.
Negative stories.
Exactly. Because it's clear many Muslim schools don't fit that negative mold at all. In fact, our sources show lots of them are actively working to foster understanding inclusivity.
Like that school principal you mentioned.
Yeah, we heard from Principal Aisha Rahman at a school in a diverse urban area. She talked about their mission being about educating global citizens rooted in faith and compassion. Sounds great, right?
It does.
Yeah.
What about the curriculum itself?
Well, it included Islamic studies, naturally, but crucially, alongside subjects like world religions, history, civics, all designed, they said, to promote open-mindedness.
So teaching about other faiths, too.
Apparently so. A teacher, Miss Fatima, told us they teach about Christianity, Judaism, other faiths. The goal being for kids to respect everyone, no matter their background.
And did the students feel that?
It seems like it. We heard from a 15-year-old student, Zain. He said, "We're taught that kindness and justice are core to Islam." And get this, he added, "We even had a guest speaker from a synagogue last month."
Wow, okay, so really putting it into practice.
It certainly sounds like it.
And, these aren't just feel-good anecdotes. The numbers actually back this up quite strongly.
Oh, yeah. What did you find?
A 2023 study in the Journal of Education Policy found that a huge majority, 85% of Muslim schools in Western countries incorporate interfaith education.
85%. That's significant.
Very. And many even host joint events with Christian or Jewish schools. We also saw a 2024 report from the Department of Education in the Philippines.
Okay.
It specifically praised Muslim schools there for integrating peace education to help tackle local Christian-Muslim tensions.
So these initiatives really suggest that, the vast majority of these schools aren't just not spreading hate.
Right, they're actively trying to build bridges. They're part of the solution in many communities.
That's a powerful counter-narrative backed by data. But sometimes you need to see it in action, right?
Absolutely. A tangible example helps.
Well, our sources highlighted a really great one, a community cleanup event. It was organized by Al Noor Muslim School, located in a very multicultural neighborhood.
Okay, tell me about it.
It wasn't just for the school. They got students, parents, but also neighbors, Muslims, Christians, people with no religion, all working together.
Doing what?
Cleaning up and beautifying a local park, shoulder to shoulder. And they made it a real event. Food stalls, music, even interfaith prayers. It sounded like a genuinely festive, welcoming atmosphere.
That sounds fantastic. What was the school's goal with that?
The principal, Dr. Hassan, put it really simply. We want to show we're part of this community and not separate from it.
And did it work? What was the impact?
It seems like it really did. We saw a quote from a non-Muslim parent, Maria. She said, "This changed how I see the school. They're not closed off, they're inviting us in."
That's powerful feedback. It shows it wasn't just about cleaning, was it?
Not at all. It was about breaking down stereotypes, building actual trust.
Yeah.
A local news report from 2025 estimated about 200 people turned up. Community leaders were calling it a model for cohesion.
And is this happening elsewhere? Is it just a one-off?
Apparently not.
Yeah.
A 2024 Guardian article mentioned similar events popping up in Canada, Australia, the UK.
Interesting.
It shows how these schools can actually be catalysts for positive community engagement in diverse areas.
So they can be real community hubs, not just educational institutions.
Exactly. That example really shows the practice. But let's circle back to the core issue that often sparks the whole debate. What are they actually teaching inside the classroom?
Right, the curriculum question.
We have to acknowledge the concerns about problematic materials. And yeah, our sources did mention isolated cases, like an incident in 2023 in a U.S. school.
What happened there?
A textbook reportedly described non-Muslims as infidels. It prompted an investigation, as you'd expect.
Okay, so it does happen sometimes.
It does, but the sources are really careful to stress. These seem to be the exceptions, not the rule.
That's a crucial distinction, isn't it? So what is the standard practice?
Well, mostly, Muslim schools follow the national curriculum for core subjects.
Like math, science, history.
Right, and then they supplement that with Islamic studies. A 2024 analysis by Education Week found that 90% of Muslim schools in the U.S. use accredited textbooks.
90%. That suggests a high degree of alignment with general educational standards.
It does, and they often have oversight from local education boards, too.
So there's accountability there.
We even looked at a sample curriculum from that Al Noor school, the one with the cleanup. It had lessons on the Quran, Islamic history, ethics, but alongside all the standard subjects. And what stood out was the Islamic studies part explicitly emphasized values like compassion, justice, respect for diversity.
Any mention of interfaith relations?
Yes, clear references to interfaith coexistence.
Okay. And is that typical elsewhere?
It seems so. A 2025 BBC report looked at UK Muslim schools and found similar things. Many were using materials vetted by interfaith councils specifically to ensure they were inclusive.
That's encouraging. But are there challenges?
Definitely. We can't ignore those. Resource constraints are a big one.
Meaning outdated books.
Sometimes, yeah. Or, as a 2024 Times article pointed out, underfunded schools might end up relying on unvetted donations for materials.
Which could potentially let problematic content slip through.
Exactly. So it's not necessarily about bad intentions, but maybe a need for better resources and support.
Right. It becomes an issue of investment, not just condemnation. Which brings us back to that bigger question, really. If the data shows most schools are doing positive things, and curricula are largely standard or even vetted for inclusivity, why does this cloud of suspicion hang around?
Yeah, why does that narrative persist?
Well, this debate doesn't happen in a vacuum, does it? We have to talk about Islamophobia.
You think that's shaping perceptions?
Absolutely. It's often amplified by certain media outlets, political rhetoric,
Mm.
and it definitely influences how people view Muslim institutions. The data on this is quite stark, actually.
How so?
A 2025 Pew survey found that 40% of Americans view Muslim institutions with suspicion.
40%, that's huge.
It is.
Yeah.
And often, the survey linked this suspicion directly to misinformation.
So it's perception fueled by misinformation, creating a real barrier.
Yes. And it leads to what some call out as double standards.
What do you mean?
Well, we saw a 2023 X thread from a Muslim educator. They basically asked why Christian or Jewish schools rarely face the same level of intense scrutiny, even when they might have their own occasional controversies.
That's a fair point. Is the focus disproportionate?
It often seems that way, and you have to consider the geopolitical context, too.
Like post 9/11?
Exactly. Post 9/11 fears, ongoing conflicts in the Middle East,
Yeah.
they've cast a really long shadow. Muslim schools sometimes get unfairly lumped in with global extremism.
Even without evidence.
Right. A 2024 Foreign Policy article put it bluntly. Sometimes, these local education debates are often proxies for broader anxieties about immigration and identity.
Ah, so the school becomes a symbol for other, bigger fears.
Precisely. And that explains why accusations can gain so much traction, even if the supporting evidence is pretty thin on the ground.
Okay, so given all this complexity, the real issues, the data, the perceptions, the broader context, what's the way forward? How do we address genuine concerns without just demonizing whole communities?
That's the critical question, and our sources do point towards some concrete solutions.
Like what? What steps can be taken?
Well, first off, strengthening oversight seems key, but fairly. Advocating for transparent, consistent regulation for all faith-based schools. Muslim, Christian, Jewish, others. Ensure accountability across the board without singling anyone out.
Is anyone doing that?
The UK's 2025 policy requiring curriculum audits for all religious schools was mentioned as a potentially good model.
Okay, so fair oversight. What else?
Investing in inclusivity, actively funding things like interfaith programs, better teacher training on diversity.
That makes sense, like those Canadian education grants from 2024.
Exactly like those. Supporting the positive efforts. Third, we need to amplify the positive stories.
The media's role.
Huge role. Balancing the negative narratives by showcasing initiatives like that Al-Noor cleanup. We saw a 2025 CNN feature on interfaith school partnerships. That kind of storytelling can genuinely shift perceptions.
So change the story by telling the whole story.
Precisely. Fourth, schools themselves need to keep engaging their communities.
Like the open houses or inviting neighbors in.
Yes. An Australian study found that kind of direct community engagement reduced local prejudice by 30%.
30%. That's significant impact from just reaching out.
It really is. And finally, it kind of comes down to all of us, doesn't it?
How so?
Challenging stereotypes, pushing back against misinformation when we see it, whether it's online or just in conversation, fostering a culture of understanding rather than suspicion.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Better oversight, investment, positive storytelling, community engagement, and individual responsibility.
That seems to be the consensus from the sources, yes.
It's clear then that this question we started with, are Muslim schools fostering hate? It's incredibly complex. It's rooted in some real, though often isolated, concerns.
But it's also heavily distorted by stereotypes and broader anxieties.
Right. And while those isolated curriculum issues definitely need scrutiny and proper oversight, the overwhelming evidence we looked at suggests most Muslim schools are actually committed to tolerance, to cohesion.
From the interfaith lessons inside the classroom.
To things like those community cleanups outside it, these places seem to be actively working to bridge divides, not make them wider.
So thinking about everything we've unpacked today, the data, the stories, the context.
Yeah.
Maybe the final thought for you, the listener, is this.
Okay.
Given this nuanced reality, what does it suggest about how we as a society could maybe approach these sensitive debates about faith, education, and identity more constructively?
How can we learn from the bridge building happening in many of these schools?
Exactly. How can we apply those lessons, the engagement, the focus on shared values, the push against stereotypes to other areas where divisions seem just as deep or maybe even deeper?